Stop scrolling for a second and look at my face. Really look at it. I'm 35 years old and I have stage 4 cancer. I'm here in the hospital because I have something urgent to tell you. I want to talk about why your midlife crisis is actually the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I used to be just like you. I spent my 20s and my early 30s fighting a silent war against time that I was never going to win. I'm talking about the expensive creams, the heavy filters, and the way I used to pull my skin back in the mirror every single morning. I thought getting older was a thief, coming to steal my beauty and my worth. I want to save you from decades of mistakes. I want to tell you why every wrinkle on your forehead is a victory, not a failure. Here in the oncology ward, we don't count years anymore. I've realized that being afraid of getting old is just a waste of the time you actually have left to live. Just a year ago, I was obsessed with my reflection. I remember standing in my bathroom on my 34th birthday, holding a jar of night cream that cost more than my car insurance. I found a tiny line near my eye, a crow's foot, and I actually cried. I stayed home that night and refused to go out to dinner with my husband, Marco, because I felt old. I wasted my last healthy birthday over a millimeter of skin. It sounds completely ridiculous now, doesn't it? But back then, it felt like a tragedy. I actually believed that my value as a woman was tied to how smooth my skin stayed. I was mourning a face that was still perfectly healthy and full of life. I was so busy looking for flaws that I didn't see the miracle of simply being alive. Then everything changed in an instant. Dr. Aris talked to me in that small consultation room that always smells like peppermint and soap. He didn't look at his watch once. He looked me in the eyes and said, "We are no longer counting years, Elena. We are counting meaningful Tuesdays." Suddenly, the wrinkles I was so scared of became a luxury I would never get to afford. I was in the hospital hallway yesterday and saw a woman staring at a mirror. She was berating her reflection and pulling her skin tight toward her ears with a look of pure disgust. It hit me hard. She was terrified of the very thing I'm being denied right now: a future. She was angry at her body for surviving. Marco is here with me most days. He spins his wedding band around his finger until his skin is raw, trying to find the words to fix this. Last month in the kitchen, he looked at me and said, "I just want to grow old with you, Elena, even if we're both miserable and wrinkled." He doesn't care about the scarf or the weight I've lost. He just wants the years. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and felt lucky to see a new line? When was the last time you thanked your body for sticking around long enough to change? We spend our lives trying to stop the clock, but we never think about what happens when the clock actually breaks. Aging isn't a problem. It's the goal. I know it's hard to hear this. You probably think I'm just bitter because my time is running out. Maybe I am. A little bit. But I've seen through the veil now, and I can see how much energy you're wasting on a shadow. I want to tell you about my sister, Julia. She came to visit me last week, and she said something that changed everything. I spent 34 years believing a massive lie. I thought my face was a project that needed constant maintenance. I treated every birthday like a funeral for my youth. It's exhausting, isn't it? Trying to outrun a clock that never stops ticking for anyone. Let me tell you about my last healthy birthday. I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, holding a jar of night cream. It was emerald green and cost $200. I remember the smell of it. Lavender and expensive chemicals. I was rubbing it into my skin like it was holy water that could save me from turning 35. That's when I saw it. A tiny, jagged line right at the corner of my left eye. A crow's foot. It was less than a millimeter long, but to me, it looked like a canyon. I leaned in so close to the glass that my breath fogged it up. I tried to smooth it out with my thumb, but it stayed there. I actually started to sob. I spent an hour crying because I thought I was becoming unpleasant to look at. Marco came to the door and asked if I was ready for dinner. I told him I wasn't going. I felt hideous. I wasted my last healthy birthday hiding in a dark room because of a tiny line on my face. I gave up a whole night of laughter for a wrinkle. He didn't understand. He just looked at me with this confused, hurt expression. He said, "Elena, you're the most beautiful woman I know." But I didn't believe him. I thought he was just being nice. I thought the world was looking at me and seeing an expiration date. I was so caught up in maintenance that I forgot how to be a person. I hated the gray hairs. I hated the sagging skin. I hated the birthday candles and the jokes about getting over the hill. I was at war with my own biology. I saw every year as a subtraction from my value. Now that same jar of $200 cream is sitting on my hospital bedside table. It's right next to a bottle of morphine and a box of medical gloves. I don't use it to look young anymore. I just use it to keep my hands from cracking because the chemotherapy makes my skin so dry. It's not a miracle in a jar. It's just grease. I look at it and realize that I spent thousands of dollars trying to stop a clock that was about to break. I want to scream at the woman I was a year ago. She had health. She had a future. She had everything I'm fighting for right now, and she threw it away for a crow's foot. Don't be that woman. Please don't be her. My sister Julia came to see me last week. She's 32 and works in marketing. Usually we tell each other everything. But lately there is this wall between us that neither of us knows how to climb over. We're speaking the same language, but we're living in two completely different worlds now. She was here in room 412, standing by the window. The sun was hitting the sterile white walls, making everything look too bright and too clean. She was fidgeting with her phone, looking everywhere except at the IV pole. It's hard for people to look at the machinery of death without blinking. Julia spent 20 minutes talking about her morning. She told me about the elevator ride up to her office and how the overhead lighting was aggressive. She saw a wrinkle on her forehead in the mirror and panicked. She described that tiny line like it was a full-blown medical emergency. She told me how she spent the whole morning searching for specialists and checking her bank account for another round of injections. She was so distressed, so genuinely upset about a millimeter of skin moving when she smiled. I just watched her, wondering when we both became so fragile that a wrinkle could break our spirit. Then she looked at me and said, "You're so lucky you don't have to worry about these aging problems right now, Elle." The room went completely silent. I could hear the hum of the infusion pump. She didn't mean to be cruel. She honestly thought she was being relatable. To her, my cancer was a strange kind of freedom from the burden of growing old. She didn't realize that she was complaining about the very thing I would give my soul to have: a future. I looked at her forehead. It was unnaturally smooth, frozen by Botox into a perfect, expressionless mask. Even when she started to cry, her skin didn't move. She has spent thousands of dollars to make sure her face never tells the story of her life. She is terrified of a line that signifies she is still participating in the world. We used to spend hours talking about skincare and diets, wasting our lives analyzing our pores. Now I see that she's mourning her youth while she's still standing right in the middle of it. She thinks she is losing her beauty. I realized she is actually losing her life to a lie. Last Tuesday, I was in the infusion center. It's a cold room where we all sit in recliners, hooked up to bags of chemicals. Nobody ever looks at the view from the windows. We're all too busy watching the drips. That's where I met Mrs. Beatrice. She was 78 years old, and her face was a masterpiece of survival. I couldn't stop staring at her. Her cheeks and her hands were covered in deep, rhythmic lines, what I used to call accordion wrinkles. They were everywhere. Every time she moved, her skin folded into 1,000 different stories. She looked like a map of a very long, very complicated life. I looked at her and felt my old vanity flare up. I actually thought, I never want to look like that. I was sitting there with my silk scarf and my smooth forehead, feeling superior because I didn't have her flaws. I was dying, but I was still judging a survivor for her wrinkles. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up and started laughing at a photo of her great-grandson. When she laughed, those wrinkles didn't just appear. They danced. They caught the light. They made her look more alive than anyone I've ever seen in a magazine. Her face didn't just sag. It radiated history and joy. She caught me staring and just winked at me. She leaned over and said, "Every one of these lines is a bill I paid to stay at the party, honey. And I'm glad I'm expensive." That sentence hit me like a physical blow. I thought about my $200 cream and my hours of sobbing over a crow's foot. I realized that Mrs. Beatrice wasn't old. She was successful. She had navigated 7 decades of sun, grief, and gravity. She had outlived her peers and earned every single millimeter of that loose skin. Beatrice earned her lines. She earned the sag in her jaw and the thinness of her skin. She paid for those marks with years of laughter at kitchen tables and tears at funerals. She didn't lose her youth. She traded it for something much more valuable. She traded it for a story that has a middle and a long, beautiful ending. I looked down at the portacath under my sweater. It's not elegant. It's definitely not age-defying, but it's the only thing keeping me in the game. I realized right then that getting old isn't a problem to be solved. It's a prize to be won. I remember the day the prize was taken away from me. It was in Dr. Eris's office, a small room that always had this sharp, clean smell of peppermint and antiseptic. I was looking at a framed diploma on the wall, counting the letters in the university's name because I was too terrified to look at the man sitting across from me. I still had that expensive, useless night cream in my purse. Dr. Eris didn't look at his watch once. In a world where everyone is rushing to the next appointment or the next anti-aging treatment, he just sat there. He looked me straight in the eyes with a kindness that felt heavier than the news he was about to give. He didn't use big, scary medical words at first. He just let the silence settle until I was ready to hear it. Then he said the words that changed my entire internal compass. He told me it was stage 4. My first thought wasn't about my soul or my legacy. It was a flash of pure, stupid vanity. I thought about the gray hairs I'd been plucking out that morning. Then he looked at me and said, "We are no longer counting years, Elena. We are counting meaningful Tuesdays." Suddenly, the 3 decades I'd already lived felt like a fortune I'd spent on nothing but shadows and mirrors. The war with my reflection ended right there. Vanity is a luxury for people who think they have forever. I would have given every cent I owned to guarantee I'd live long enough to have a face as lined as Mrs. Beatrice's. A few days later, they fitted the portacath under my collarbone. It's this small, hard bump of plastic and titanium sitting right beneath my skin. When I first saw the scar in the mirror, I didn't cry because it was ugly. I cried because it was the only piece of jewelry I had that actually meant something. It wasn't a status symbol or a fashion choice. It was my admission ticket to stay in the game for one more round. I had been so ungrateful to the skin that was trying its best to hold me together. We spend our lives insulting the only home we will ever truly have. I realized then that every sign of aging is actually a miracle in disguise. That gray hair you found this morning? That's a victory. That sag in your jawline? That's a biological success story. You are succeeding at staying alive in a world that tries to break you every day. Aging is the tax you pay for the privilege of being here. I'm being evicted because I can't pay the tax anymore, but I would pay it 10 times over if I could. I understand why you're afraid. I know the world is loud, and it tells you every single day that your value is shrinking as your birthdays go up. It's scary to feel like you're becoming invisible to the society you've worked so hard to belong to. I know that the fear of a new wrinkle isn't always just about being vain. It's about the fear of being replaced by something newer, shinier, and more relevant than you feel right now. But there is a very dangerous line where that protection becomes a prison. We spend so much energy trying to look like we haven't lived that we actually stop living. We treat our bodies like failing projects instead of the miracle vessels they are. I was that person just a year ago, and I can tell you that the view from the end of the line is very different. That fear you feel about getting old, it is a distraction from the miracle of breathing. If I could go back to that 34th birthday, I would change everything about that night. I wouldn't spend a single second crying over a crow's foot or hiding from the camera. I would have put on my favorite dress and gone to dinner with Marco. I would have laughed until my face hurt, welcoming every single line that laughter left behind. I would have celebrated the fact that I had survived another year on this planet, instead of mourning a millimeter of skin. I would have turned off my phone during every sunset and stopped pulling my skin back in the mirror every morning. I would have taken more photos without filters and gone to the beach without worrying about how my stomach looked. I would have realized that my body wasn't something to be fixed, but a home to be enjoyed. I would have lived with the intensity that only comes when you realize that later is never a guarantee for anyone. But I can't go back to that girl in the mirror. I'm here in room 412 now, and today is just another one of those meaningful Tuesdays I was promised. The green jar of cream is still sitting on my bedside table, half empty and completely useless. It couldn't save my cells, and it certainly didn't make those last healthy months any happier. I spent my youth mourning its end, and now that the clock is actually stopping, I see how much I wasted. Please, do me a favor and stop telling yourself that you're getting old. Start telling yourself that you are still here, and that it's a miracle. Every gray hair you find is a victory in a war that most people don't even realize they're fighting. Every wrinkle on your face is a bill you paid to stay at the party. When you look in the mirror tomorrow, don't look for what's changing. Look for what is surviving, and be proud of it. Send this video to someone specific who needs to hear it. Maybe it's your sister who is obsessed with the mirror, or a friend who is terrified of their next birthday. Tell me in the comments, what is one flaw of aging that you are going to start being grateful for today? We have to stop this cycle of hating our own growth. We need to start celebrating the fact that we get to change at all, because the alternative is silence. My time is running out. The machines in this room are humming, and the sun is starting to set outside the window. I don't have many Tuesdays left, but you do. You have a whole future of wrinkles and gray hair waiting for you, if you're lucky enough to get there. Don't waste the years being miserable about the price of admission. Aging is a privilege that many people are denied. Use your time while the clock is still ticking. I'm out of time. But you're not. Use it.